Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Trinity Lutheran Church. It's my church, so I'm here to greet you and welcome you to be here. Just a couple of quick announcements. First, if you don't know, there are two bathrooms back there. I'm going to do my flight attendant routine. Two over there, and then over here, there's one in the men's room. The men's room is where you came in through the door, and the women's restroom is on the other side. There's a little nursery, and then the women's room is inside there. Wanted to make an announcement that our community trunk or treat is happening on the 29th. So any child, grandkids, kids want to come out for that, you're certainly welcome. It's in the parking lot back here where you're parked. And then if you want to participate in a trunk or treat, if you don't want to do the handout candy from your door or your neighborhood doesn't get any, give the church a call and we'll be welcome to have you have handout candy to the kids we get. The last couple of years we've got about 150 or so kids come through. So it's great to have more trunks and more kids. And then there's a certain game going on, and there is a guest Wi-Fi available. Not that you should be looking at your phones in church, but this is not a church meeting, so if a certain score has to be checked, that's fine. And then last, if you're looking for a church or are interested in this church, we have service at 9 o'clock. Website's trinityhammond.com. We've been in the community for 102 years. I think we started in 1919. This church was built in 54. And there are plenty of members here that could give you a whole history lesson. I've only been here for about 4 years or so. As I was in Indiana, then I was in Kansas, and then I'm back in Indiana. So it's good to be back in my home state. And no one likes being in Kansas. No, I'm sure Kansas is fine, but I was in the Dust Bowl, so it was is desolate. And so that's it for announcements from me. I think we're going to have Ruth come up, and I know we've got some guests from the community, and so we're looking forward to that. I also have this meeting is being live streamed at the moment and being recorded on the Trinity Facebook page or the YouTube page. And so if you have somebody who wanted to watch this and couldn't make the meeting, you can point them to our website and they'll be able to find it. And so that's available for anyone who missed the meeting or wanted to double check what somebody said. So thank you very much for coming tonight, and I'm going to hand it over to Ruth.
Thank you, Pastor. Wait a minute here. There's about 3 feet difference here. Can everybody hear me? I do want to thank everybody. This is a great turnout. And it's for the neighborhood. We call it a neighborhood watch. The city has decided that we are going to drop the word crime watch. It's a negative type connotation, so and we want everybody to know that it's a neighborhood watch. If you have anything that pertains to this particular neighborhood, and there's actually a map that's on that little billboard out there that shows all the houses in the South Homan area, and that goes from State Line to Lyman, from 165th all the way down to the river. There's almost 800 houses in our area. So we've got a very, very wide range of people, but they're all very interested, and thank you very much for coming out. We are going to have the Westlake train people here to tell us what's going on. I know that that's what's on everybody's mind, and hopefully they'll give you some answers before you even ask the questions. They will take questions after they give their little presentation, but if you do have questions for them, please be polite. Raise your hand and wait until this is like back in school. Raise your hand until they acknowledge you, and then stand up so that everybody else can hear that question, and then they'll try to answer it for you, okay? Phil Talon, our chief of staff, was supposed to be here also tonight, but he had another meeting and he's running late. He may show up in a little bit. One of the things I'm going to start out with is Scott Holbrook, our Hammond Police Community Watch person, and he's going to give us the stats, or hardly any stats, crime stats of the entire neighborhood. And Scott?
All right, thank you, Ruth. Great turnout tonight. I'm sure you're all here for me. Right. No, but this group does always have a good turnout. It always has, even back when it was Indy Illy and Sarah Foster was running it. This neighborhood over here always does turn out for its meetings to stay informed and know what's going on. So as Ruth said, any of you that don't know me, my name is Scott Holbrook. I'm a sergeant with the Hammond Police Department. I've been on 22 years. I've been doing community affairs, which is what this our unit is. There's only 5 of us. I cover all of South Hammond and all of Hessville for the community affairs. And so I'm your community affairs officer. So if anybody after the meeting would like to speak to me about something, I'll be right out here or right in here. I can give you my card, my phone number, my email. I'll be happy to answer questions after that. I do have some crime stats. I went back to August 1st. As Ruth said, this area doesn't have a whole lot going on, which is great. August 8th, we had 1 report of intimidation. It was in a 200 block of Lawndale. The victim stated he had received threatening phone calls from an unknown male suspect. Then, let's see, on August 27th, we had an attempted robbery. It was reported around 3 a.m. It was on the 6800 block of Lineman. The victim stated he was walking on the bike path when a dark-colored Dodge Charger with Illinois plates pulled up and a black male suspect pulled out a knife and threatened the victim. The victim then pulled out his pistol and pointed it at the suspect who was holding the knife. The victim stated the suspect then got back in his vehicle and fled the area. So I guess the moral of that story would be don't bring a knife to a gunfight. Nobody was injured, nobody was hurt, no property was taken or stolen. Let's see. And then we had 1 burglary. That was on September 27th, the 200 block of Humfer. It occurred during the day while the victim was at work. When she returned home, she found a rear window had been opened. That's how the suspect gained entry and stole. Items stolen was a handgun, jewelry, and power tools. So that was all the crime stats I had. Like I said, if there's anything people want to talk to me afterwards, I'd be happy to. One thing I do want to give out a plug to, anyone have any old, expired, outdated prescriptions at home in your medicine cabinet? We are having the DEA prescription pill take-back day. It will be Saturday, October 29th. It'll be from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. in the lobby of the police station, 509 Douglas. So if you have anything in your bathroom, your medicine cabinet, anything you want to get rid of, bring it there and you can get it disposed of properly.
What was that date again?
It's the 29th, October 29th, Saturday.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you. Oh, one of the things I forgot to say at the very beginning was, thank you, Reverend, for letting us use the church. We appreciate it very much. And the beautiful, beautiful church we have here is, something that the neighborhood has always been aware of. And we thank you and your congregation for keeping it up and for letting us play here, too. One of the other things I have is our councilman. We are if anybody asks you, we are in the 4th district in Hammond. And our councilman is Bill Emerson, and he's going to give us a little bit of what's going on in the 4th district.
Thanks, Ruth. There's a game going on tonight, and I know the Reverend talked about the Wi-Fi, but I'm a Steeler fan, so it's not that I don't care about the Bears, but my dad was a Bear fan. But anyway, don't bring a knife to a gunfight. That is so true, and I'm glad that that guy ran, by the way, Scott. Historically, I give updates of projects, and so that's what I'm going to do for the 4th District. We have a capital improvement board, and we have an engineering department. And the capital improvement board, to give you a brief history, everything has to kind of go through them. So I don't have the money that I had when I was first elected, which was 12 years ago. So I I have less than I had. And the people before me that had this job had more than I had. So right now, so what I do is I submit to the Capital Improvement Board. So I struggle with good news or bad news. So I'm going to give the bad news first. What I asked for in January of 22. So here's what I asked for from the engineering department and the Capital Improvement Board. Forest Avenue from Lawndale to the river overlaid, and curbs. The curbs were in really bad shape on Forest Avenue. They said no. Van Buren, I asked for a complete rebuild. To give you a little history on that, I did the 7300 block and the 7400 block, and then money got really tight. And I felt bad for the 175th of Van Buren, and 176th is about a half a block. Anyway, the complete rebuild, they said no to that as well. And Tapper, an overlay, not a complete rebuild, but just an overlay from 173rd to 176th, and they said no to that. And then Jackson, from Vine to 171st Street, they also said no to that. So I guess the moral of that story is you can't always get what you want. And that's a song. That's a good song. So anyway, now on the good side of the news, the one thing I did ask for was overlays on Harrison, 169th to 173rd. They said yes. And then they surprised me. River Drive, which is in the 4th District, and it's Columbia to Walnut, right by the Optimist ball fields. They added that, and I did Walnut to Bertram, but my first year in office. But they added that, so that was a surprise. They said no to 4, and they added 1 to the 2 that they did. Now, ornamental lighting, and I requested 2 years ago in 2021 in January from State Line from 172nd Place to 169th Street, roughly. There's another street that runs right near there, and that's because of the flood project. They have the half wall. It's about actually as tall as that, and they have that coming up to, oh boy, I don't know what street that is, but it comes up State Line a little bit. So when I proposed ornamental lighting, I said, how about maybe you could just do it on one side, because on the other side is actually the wall for part of the length. So I'm not sure what they're going to do, but I ran into engineering this morning, and they said that they're going to start, and they can start this even over the holidays, like New Year's. They can actually, I don't know if the ground doesn't freeze or what, but pour the cement. So that's going to be done. It'll be 2023 before we know it. And anyway, that's going to be done on State Line. So basically, and the River Drive bike bridge, Calumet, and I know some people don't like them, some people do. Calumet and River Drive, it'll say welcome to Munster when you're going south, and then welcome to Hammond, hopefully, when you're going north. And ideally, I'd like to just have all kinds of awnings and everything, that involves code enforcement from the fireworks stores all the way down Calumet to 165th. Actually, Calumet all the way north, but kind of like Munster has on Ridge Road. I don't know if you know, the kind of the awnings match and all that. But, you know, you can't always get what you want. So that involves people, you know, meeting with code and zoning and everything else. So at any rate, I had to get the bike bridge in there because that is done, by the way. A lot of people, I know people complain about it. It's done through like a parks grant, for lack of a better word. I don't remember the name, but it's not. So there's a lot of bike bridges in Hammond, and they help us out with that. So, and the Little Calumet River Basin Commission is helping us too to build that bike bridge. And that's a very dangerous intersection because they get off 94, and you know, it's just the people get in a lot of accidents there, and they do U-turns because all the ramps are closed, as you probably know. So anyway, that's my report, Ruth. And by the way, Ruth does a great job here. Yes, sir. When is it going to be done? Well, I know that Gary is working on. That's the other thing I should mention. With anything that gets done, it's surprising we can do even overlays, because construction, because of COVID, I guess, I don't know, supply chain issues, it's very hard to get jobs finished, projects finished. So they've already got some of the holders up for the trestles, and Gary Up's doing the majority of that work. If I had to guess, I'd say late fall, and once we get to winter, it's kind of hard to have a ribbon cutting when it's 20 below. But I would say late autumn, and then we run into winter, and so they're not telling me. But I know everybody wants to hear about the train. Yes, sir. Oh, thank you. Hi, Dean.
I hope you don't mind me interrupting to answer the gentleman's
Dan, would
question.
you like to come up?
Sure.
I think everyone can hear me.
Come on, Dean.
Unfortunately, we won't be able to complete the work this year because of some issues that Councilman Emerson has discussed. We are looking to complete the project in the spring of 2020.
Okay.
Thank you.
Because I know they were working on it, and that's really all I have.
Thank you. Oh, Bill. Thank you, Bill. There is another one of the councilmen. Oh, thank you, Dean, for, Dean Button is our engineer? Yes, ma'am. Okay, for the city of Hammond, for the answer to that. There is another one of our councilmen. I didn't see where you went. Dan, where are you? Dan Spitali. Stand up, back row, Dan. Dan is one of our at-large. There are 3 at-large council people. And what that is, the councilmen have their own districts, but then there are 3 at-large, which means they have the entire city. So they're kind of have their hands all over the place. But that's really one of the things that's so nice about that. And Janet Vanez, who is another one of the at-large council women, was planning on coming tonight. Unfortunately, her husband is quite ill, and she had to call it off. So we'll say a little prayer for him. Right now, I want to get to a few little announcements. One of the things that we always have that's coming up is goodies for the good guys. And if everybody remembers that, it's cookies for the cops. And so we will be having that in November, middle of November, and we'll be asking for some volunteers on that. And there will be a flyer going out. And so one of the things, too, about when they were asking you if you're part of our contact list, even if you don't have email, you'll be getting flyers if your name and address is on there. And one of the reasons that we wanted you to sign in for just your name and address if you are on there is we'd like to find out what neighborhood you're from. Where are you from? It's a real diverse area. And like I was saying, there is a map that's right up on the wall on that pegboard over there that shows all the streets in the area and how many houses are on each street, just to let you know how large the area is. But we will be doing Goodies for the Good Guys in November, and that's when we collect goodies and we take them to the police department. One of the things that I wanted to mention that was really interesting, a lot of you know that I'm also in the Historical Society. I'm the vice president of the Hammond Historical Society, and I really enjoy looking up people and looking at stories about Hammond. In fact, we just had our Oak Hill tour last week, and that is something that we do every year, and it honors all the people that are in the historic Oak Hill Cemetery that was started in 1885. So there are a lot of the people there. It started filling up. Elmwood Cemetery was then started to take all the people, and St. Joe's, St. John is the other cemetery. But there is another older one that nobody really realizes, and it was called Greenwood. Greenwood Cemetery is where St. Joe's, St. John Cemetery is now, but it was there before the St. Joe's, St. John bought the property. And I have a little story to tell you, a history story, especially for all those people that live on Humfer. Does anybody ever want to know who Humfer was, why it's called Humfer? And if you ever find a little street name in Hammond, and it seems to be a person's last name, it's basically because that person had something to do with that subdivision or the city of Hammond. Toll Street, Soul, they're all people that started Hammond. But here's a little note about Joseph Humfer. Joseph was born in Germany to Francis Humfer and Dorothy Snyder. His mother passed away only days after he was born. So his father remarried, and he had a half-sister and half-brother, Barbara and Casper, who lived to adulthood. He and his family immigrated to the United States sometime around 1847 and moved to Chicago, where he met and married Agnes Held in August of 1849 at St. Peter's Church. In 1850, a son, Michael, was born, but unfortunately died only days later, and in September, Agnes also died. Joseph remarried Catherine Albert in 1851 at St. Peter's in Chicago. They eventually moved to Hammond in Lake County, Indiana. They had 13 children together, living to adult, and 9 living to adulthood. Joseph served in the Civil War, and from October 1862 to October 1865. He enlisted at Indianapolis and served in the 32nd Regiment Volunteer Infantry, also called the 1st German Resident. He was wounded in the Battle of Chickamauga on September 19, 1863. He recuperated at a hospital in Nashville, Tennessee, and returned to his company and was discharged at the end of the war in San Antonio, Texas. He owned acreage in Hammond, which he farmed until retirement. He died at the ripe old age of 90. So if anybody is living in Humfer Street from 165th all the way down to the river, that was Joseph Humfer's farm. And Holman Avenue wasn't in there. The railroad tracks were there. But there was also something else that I had heard about him, which was really interesting, too. When he came back from the Civil War, of course, he came wandering back. There were not a whole lot of roads. He came up on a horse, and he was looking for his house. and he couldn't find his house. He knew his house was right here. He built this house. So he just kept looking around, and he was wandering around, and then he found somebody else, and he says, I'm Joseph Humfer. What happened to my house? Where's my house? It actually burnt down while he was in the Civil War. They built a new one, but they had built it a couple blocks away. So Joseph found his house. So that's the story of the Humphers. Okay, that's your history lesson for the day. There's going to be a quiz on that. Okay. If anybody ever has any questions or anything, you can always my business cards are out there. There's a lot of information out there in the city of Hammond, and if you're interested in finding out something, we can contact the police department, or we can contact somebody else that can help you out. Like I said, Dean's the engineer if anything is happening. But what I want to do right now is I want to turn the meeting over to Holly and John, and they will let you know what's going on with the railroad.
Good evening, everybody. I'm John Lucas on behalf of NICD. Thank you for coming out and finding out a little bit more about the Westlake Corridor project. Holly Taylor is the project manager for NICD, and will give a short opening speech about a little bit about where we're at, and then I can answer more questions about the process that's going on that you see every day.
Yeah, so over there we had a little pamphlet. If you guys didn't grab one, please do. It has a ton of information about how you can contact us with more questions. It also has a little bit of a schedule of what's going on along your neighborhood. Currently, we are working on the parking lot over here and the drainage pond. But we will have this station right at 173rd. There will be an entrance from there to the parking lot. There will be 5 trains during the rush hour that'll be coming through. Otherwise, and that will go all the way to Chicago. Otherwise, that will be a shuttle on the off-peak trains to our Hammond Gateway station. And that's where you can kind of hop on and go eastbound or westbound. That's a quick little update. You can give more information.
Okay. Thank you, Holly. So I know for people that are in the neighborhood, you obviously have witnessed a lot of opening and closures of streets that have gone on throughout the corridor. A reminder that the project does run from downtown Hammond or North Hammond at the existing train station and runs all the way to Munster Dyer, and a new cross street will be created at the end of the 8-mile section known as Main Street. So that is the entire corridor. We are working in multiple locations throughout the corridor. In this area, most prevalent that you're seeing from 165th South to 173rd, there's been a lot of utility work that occasionally has closed Lyman in order for the contractor to make connections into storm sewer and sewer system connections, as well as relocate existing utilities, which are water main, sewer, and in some cases third-party utilities, such as your telecommunications, gas lines, and electrical lines. The majority of that work in this area is substantially complete. The next big road to close will be 165th Street. Currently, Conkey is closed at the north side. We had Kenwood closed for about 6 weeks, and now we've moved over to Conkey. And those street closures, thank you for showing up tonight, Mr. Button, are closely coordinated with the City of Hammond and Mr. Button's staff as far as realizing all the other going-ons within the community of other street closures or other equipment or maintenance that may need to be done. So those street closures are coordinated through city permits to allow us the opportunity to close them for the timelines that we need. And hopefully they minimize the impact of traffic disruption as well as minimize the outages of services. We've made a good effort working with Dean's staff, especially when it comes to water main and other types of services, that we minimize any disruption of those services. So that's what you've seen basically here in the last almost year from south of 165th down to the Little Calumet River. If you walk along the trail, you know that the Little Calumet, we have taken down the pedestrian bridge that is part of the Monon Trail. That bridge has been moved off to the side. It will be reinstalled as a pedestrian bridge. Currently, they're in the process of building the south abutments for both the future Westlake Corridor train bridge and the corridor's reinstallation of the pedestrian bridge. So we're working on the south bank there for the next couple weeks. Hopefully here with the end of the month coming up and maybe in early November, they'll get back and put the caissons, or the deep foundations as we like to call them, into to the north embankment. And at that point, fingers crossed, we'll continue to move forward building those structures. For those of you not familiar with heavy construction, believe it or not, the bridge that goes over the river has already been built once and disassembled. That's how we do it. So the steel is fabricated, ISC, commercial steel property right over in Gary. Several of the staff that with NICTE was able to go over and view it. So the project works in multiple locations and even off-site. So the steel structure has been built, it's been assembled or fitted as we called it, fabricated and fitted, and now it's disassembled and being placed into pieces that are easily transportable and then reassembled once the substructures are built. So that's at the south end going over the Little Calumet. Once we get over the Little Calumet, the train tracks will go north at grade all the way to Douglas. So there are no elevated structures or high embankments through this segment of the project. They're all at grade or a little bit higher than grade. If you've been along Lyman, you can see how we're starting to build up the embankment to keep, that'll be the train grade that'll run pretty consistently at that elevation. There'll be slight variations, but of course we have to meet the grades at the existing cross streets, specifically 173rd and 165th. So once we get through those intersections, the grade will go up and down a little bit as it goes north and as it goes south. So that's what we call the track slot. Currently that's being built. Being a former railroad embankment, it's been pretty straightforward. We haven't uncovered a lot of unsuitable conditions for earthwork to be able to build the track on. Some of you during our briefing over here were talking about the vibration in the neighborhood. That is a compactive effort to consolidate the material below grade and at grade so that when we build the train track, the tracks don't settle. So that's an important element of the preliminary or pre-installation work, is preparing the subgrade to have it ready for to receive the track. On the north end, we have started to receive some of the track materials, so we could be in a position in the next several months to start laying track, and that'll be up to the weather. For the parking lot itself, you can see that a large majority of the parking lot has been stripped, regraded. All the underground work is done, so all the storm sewer collection systems are in, the light pole connections are in, the light pole foundations themselves are in. The new water main is being extended up to the station, which will be providing service to the station platforms as well as irrigation for plantings. And so we call that the underground phase. So substantial completion of the underground phase has been done, and you'll notice at the very end of the parking lot is a very large detention pond. And that is exactly what it sounds like. All the water that will be trapped from the hard surfaces will be transported to the north into that pond, where they will be staged so that the water can be released at a slow rate to not interfere with any of the other surrounding drainage that goes on a regular basis. So that pond will go up and down. I think one of the people here in the audience had a really good question about that. The pond is built in the most best practice manners of safety. So there will be slight slopes, level benches, slight slopes, and level benches. So as the pond goes up and down with water levels, it allows anybody that should mistakenly try to enter the pond, which could be something that somebody would walk along, it has the ability to recover quickly. So there will be no deep drop-offs into the pond. The best practices are being installed such that it should be very gradual changes in grade. You'll reach a level spot that if you did roll in or fall in, you'd be able to stand up and extricate yourself from the water. It doesn't just drop off into a deep pond. The area itself was the old Monon yard. So for those train buffs and other people, we didn't find anything really interesting. Sorry. We found a lot of some coal and some other, crushed debris. I think there's a geologist in the audience as well, but we really didn't find anything interesting, which was, when you think about how long the Monon Rail was there, some of us have gone back and looked at aerial photos and seen the old bins and what they would use to hold coal and things like that. Most of the structures were taken down previously. We ran into a couple small foundations. and there was really no major disruptions to the work going on as efficiently as we could. We found a couple unusual pipes in the 173rd Street right-of-way, but that's not unusual. I think 173rd Street, I think we saw mapping with it being back there all the way into the early 1900s. One of the pieces of pipe we pulled out literally had a date of 1913 stamped on it, and a cast iron pipe that was been buried in the ground since, we assume, since then. So it was a relatively easy way to get through there. We apologize for the disruption on 173rd Street. That has been repaved. Obviously, the tracks are not there yet. So at 173rd, just like at 165th, when we get to that street, the track slot will be prepared and then paved over. And typically in a railroading operation, track ties and final ballast all goes down sequentially in a pretty quick move. So you'll find that when the track starts to go down, it will go down continuously. The rail that's being installed is continuously welded rail, so there's no joints. There won't be any mechanical joints that you'll hear the ta-tunk, ta-tunk, ta-tunk of a train. It's a continuously welded rail, so when it goes in, it'll be a pretty straightforward, continuous process. North of 165th Street or 169th Street, that area has been graded. There's a lot of new clay going there, so we have a nice strong base for the track, and that'll be landscaped and returned pretty much to the way it looked previous to the grading work started. There will be an access road along the east side of the track, north of the parking lot, to allow maintenance vehicles that will be operated by the owner, Nicky, to maintain the right-of-way. The only other big change that you'll see for those that frequent the use of the Monon Trail is that at 173rd Street, the trail is currently on the west side of what will be the Monon track, which is the West Lake track. And that will cross at 173rd. You'll go across to 173rd, then go east on 173rd over the tracks, and the new Monon Trail will be built on the east side of the future West Lake tracks so it can connect back into the pedestrian bridge and the Lackawanna Trail. Then once you go south of the Grand Cal River, you will descend back down grade, and there'll be a new pedestrian tunnel built at Sunnyside. And you'll go back under the embankment to restart the use of the existing trail, which is currently on the west side of the embankment. And the path will stay in its current alignment from there all the way down to Fisher Street for those that ride the bike path. As far as the work that's going on, there is a continued effort to minimize the disruption of both the public as well as noise and dust. We are required by federal requirements in the construction management that they are out there every day monitoring, the amount of airborne particulate as well as the vibrations in the area. And we've had no exceedances for those devices to my knowledge to date. It does occasionally look dusty. We are very conscious of that. Some of my colleagues know I'm a big advocate of saying if it's not wet, make it wet. I know sometimes it drags a little water out, a little mud onto the street, but we would prefer to have that water truck out there watering down the open areas so that the dust doesn't blow and create more of a, a fine dust headache for everybody than to have a little bit of mud on the street, which we can sweep up relatively easily. So that's really the big work that's going on. As Holly said, we've put a short list out of some key dates on where we're moving forward with the work. Hopefully by the middle of the summer, we should have the majority of that station in place. At this point in the season, fingers crossed, the large aggregate area that you see out there in the parking lot should be covered by asphalt. We've made arrangements at this point to make an effort with the contractor, and if we can keep the materials plants open and the weather, I know it's Bears game tonight, and they sometimes play better in cold weather, hopefully tonight. But if it doesn't get too cold too fast, we're hoping to have asphalt cover that so that it's a solid surface for the winter, and that will obviously reduce a lot of any kind of impact to the soils or mud or anything like that for that station. There won't be any lighting up. It will not be functional until the fall of 2024. So the station building itself would be the next element to be built. The station itself will go up relatively quickly. It's on shallow foundations, steel frame structure. The steel, again, is being produced off-site in Stevens Machine, Inc. in Kokomo. So that steel is being produced right down, 60, 80 miles from here. and fabricated and galvanized, so that'll be all the substructure that'll hold it up. And then the panels that actually make up the station come from a precasting fabricator. So the panels that will be dropped in like dominoes on top of that steel structure. And then there'll be a warming hut and some lighting and some windbreaks on top of that platform area. And that is an elevated platform, as you see on most of the South Shore Line trains, that the platform is at the elevation of the car. It's not an at grade, the train won't go down. The train will come in at elevation, and the platform will meet the side of the train doors. So that station will be above ground. It's a standard station. It will look a lot like Nickey's, what we call our template station, which is the Michigan City Station. So it will have the same coloring of light mauves, kind of like a brownish surface on all the concrete finishes, and then an industrial gray for a lot of the facilities that are above it. And that's what the station will look like. There will be a lighted station sign at the end of the station parking area along 173rd Street for those that are not familiar with the neighborhood when they come through, so they'll know what the parking facility is. And all the grade crossings where the train goes across will get standard railroad safety equipment of gates, flashing lights, and bells. That's already been coordinated with the Indiana Department of Transportation. So that is something that's, again, a federal requirement to have those crossing gate geometries and the sounding bells in the crossing gates. So we hope to have the majority of that equipment installed and being functional by the end of the 24 season. Not in 23, but we should have substantially complete the parking lot, but it will not be open for another year after that in this area. All right, anything you'd like to add, Holly?
You do a fantastic job
Thank you.
covering everything.
It's not my first parking lot to be built. Yes, the young lady in the back. Okay, by contract, and working with the federal government, the program is to be spent out by the fall of 2024 with what we call testing and commissioning, starting in spring of 2025. And it's my understanding that June 25 will be the official opening of the service. June 2025. 2025. Okay, I'll start in the back here again for the young lady. Yes, there's only one entrance at 173rd Street. Correct. Yeah, it'd be funneled in and out of I believe it's an arterial street. There's no way to enter it from any of the other residential streets, so at this point, 173rd Street was the chosen arterial for access. For access to the 173rd Street, it's an entrance off 173rd. The design is a large opening, and there is no traffic control entering the parking lot, so it should be free flow. So people entering the parking lot will not stop. And the parking lot is designed so that the entrance goes directly into a long corridor that takes them all the way to the end of the parking lot. So we should not have a queuing effect on 173rd Street. When leaving the parking lot, the queuing will be in the parking lot. There shouldn't be any queuing up on 173rd Street. Yeah, that will be your regular roadway traffic that will come off either Homan or Calumet Avenue. Yeah, the design studies that were done, because of the number of lanes on the road, should allow effective through traffic as well as traffic turning in and out of the parking lot. You're welcome. Gentleman here?
Probably already been done, but so with the parking lot and then the retention pond, I'm assuming you have provisions for the retention pond. If water sits there for a while, making sure it doesn't start to go in toxic, et cetera.
Right.
Blah, blah. But was it a cost issue to not to perhaps have the parking lot a more green lot, in other words, more of a forest lot like they do places where water, I'm thinking Morton Arboretum has, a green parking lot, many spaces for water to go through. Is that something that is not being considered, or is just cost not effective? Because you're talking, you're going to pave the lot, right?
Correct.
So solid pavement, which is why you need the
Correct, yep. The idea of what you call, alternative ways of capturing storm runoff or best management practices, some of those ideas were looked at in other station areas as well as here, and I think that the decision was made that based on the current status of those type of parking lots and the amount of traffic that goes in and out of this station and long-term maintenance, I believe that you're correct. It was when you say the cost, it is a cost-benefit analysis on maintaining those systems forever and the ability to properly, have those areas walkable, plowable, serviceable for the traffic that will go in and out of people commuting, hopefully 365 days a year. And as we all know here in the Midwest, any one of those days could have a skim of ice or snow or something on it. So I think the surface parking lots for a commercial site like this are more appropriate to have a solid surface, which is easier to maintain, as well as probably a safer condition for the users. So it was looked at, and you're correct, there is a lot of opportunity to drain that water. The detention pond will have a regulated release rate, so it is not designed to hold the water indeterminately. It will be released through a restrictor out into the regular drainage system. So it should not stand there that long. Yeah. Now, I'll go up here for the side here. Yes?
Yes, please stand up.
Couple questions. One of them, still wondering which side, north or south of the station will be on.
Closer to the south, to the 173rd Street area.
So it's going to be on the south side of 173rd.
Nope, it's the north side of 173rd, but the south end of the parking lot. So the parking lot is only north of 173rd.
The parking lot's only on the north side. And what number of parking lots are we talking about?
605 spaces at opening day. Nope.
We had this conversation before with the mayor, and they were supposed to talk about getting the numbers down, because since COVID, people aren't going into the city, and we would just get the numbers down to habitat. And you're saying 650 spaces, so all that green space is going to be just one huge parking space.
Yeah, I believe that the original, again, COVID, you're right, is an anomaly, which I don't think anybody wanted to forecast or could have forecasted. So whether or not the parking lot is impacted by the pandemic that happened, I can't speak to. But the way the numbers were generated comes from an analysis that was done, and I'll state clearly what was in it's 4,036 people live within a half a mile of the location. Nearly 2,300 jobs are within a half mile of the station. Occupies the former Monon Yard, and based on these analysis, that was the projected maximum use for opening day of 605, based on the models used by the federal funding agencies and the groups that do the budgeting transit modeling for building out transit stations,
And that was done back in,
2018 or 2017.
it was closer. Yeah.
There's been all these conversations with groups since then. I mean, it's wonderful to have all this government money, but why spend money that you don't need to spend on something else to have this huge parking lot that's going to be empty and all this beautiful green space is being,
Yeah.
it's just sad. It's just so sad.
It's all about the process of getting all of the federal funding for it, and because it all started beforehand, we had our full funding grant agreement submitted before the pandemic. Those were the numbers that were in there. Those are the numbers that the federal government said, yes, you are getting held accountable for these, and therefore it's impossible to really change.
$9 trillion in debt and the government could cover this. Okay. Second question, where is the station in Munster? Is it north of Ridge Road?
In Munster, there's two stations. There's a Ridge Road station, and then there's one at the south end of Munster where it meets Dyer.
Yeah, it'll
So
be
Ridge
north-
Road is the Ridge Road station is Ridge Road on the north side.
It's just right north of this,
Right, where there's the large open parcel that you can see on the west side of Manor.
right, that's what I thought, okay. So
Yeah.
how big is the parking lot in Munster?
In that one, I believe that is, 106. I think the original station there is, let me see here. Mr. Dyer, Hammond. Let me see, I think that one is 100. 106 or is it 86? Where'd it go, Holly?
I don't know.
Oh, here it
What's
is.
the ridge?
Here it
There
is.
you go.
100, yes, 106. And that includes some of the kiss and ride parking that'll be on the east side of Manor, so that you can pull off and drop, and then there'll be parking on the west side of Manor in that open green space that's there currently.
Just Ridge.
That's just Ridge. Down at the south end, at the south end, the Munster Dyer Station. That is 875. Yes,
At the Munster Dyer
Munster
Station.
Dyer Station. Yeah. Yes,
When they're all done with this, are they gonna go back to 2 lanes on home?
yeah, Nick doesn't do the roads.
Well, they moved everything over there so you guys can do your stuff, so. No? So it's always gonna stay 1 lane now?
Dean, can you speak to that?
We're not intending on making home to lanes.
Thank you.
With all the additional traffic, it's gonna be 1 lane. That makes sense.
That's my bike trail.
Yes.
What kind of safety structures are going to be on either side of the track from 173rd to 165th, and I'm sure other parts of the rail? What kind of safety structure keeps the train and electricity from people, pedestrians on the walking path, or kids, or whatever?
The train, the electricity itself is a grounded bonded system. So there's no,
It's Kettner.
yeah, I was trying to explain that. I was answering his, do you have a second question, or should I answer his first? Same question, okay. So the electrical is the standard South Shore line. It's an overhead catenary system. There's no electrical in the ground. It's a bonded system that only the poles hold up the electrical, and the train connection for electricity is at the top of the train. So there's no electrified components at grade level. Okay.
Is there going to be a chain link fence on either side of the track?
At this time, no. There's no chain link fence to wrap the right-of-way on the train.
So what protects somebody from going across the track?
Right, so people on the bike trail are open to the railroad tracks?
Yeah, just like when you cross the street with a train track, there's still, that opening is there, yes. The train will parallel the bike route,
Right,
yeah.
but there's no fencing?
There's not at this, no, there's not a length of fence for the whole length of the corridor.
Doesn't Munster have a cement wall that's going along Manor?
A cement wall is not separating, it's holding the train up in the air.
It's going over Broadmoor.
There was a retaining wall, there was a retaining wall to begin there, to hold up the elevation of the train so that you can go over Broadmoor. Otherwise, if we brought it down to grade, you would have had to close Broadmoor. So the train stays at elevation, and we replaced what's called a stack block wall with a concrete wall for durability and strength. So that will hold for 50, 60, 80 years.
South of 173rd to Little Cal, that whole little subdivision with a lot of little children, nothing is going to keep them from going on the tracks.
It'll be on grade there, correct. There'll be railroad embankment, so there'll be a 3-foot, ballast embankment that you'll note before you reach the track, but there won't be a physical barrier between them, no. Yeah, unfortunately, that's, with the way right-of-ways work, it's not unusual anywhere in this area to see trains that don't have, fences along their right-of-way. It's not really a standard installation. It's not required by the federal government.
This makes common sense though.
Yeah, common sense of fencing and everything that, like, it'd be like roadways.
Understand that area there. There's a lot of kids, you don't live around here. There's a lot of kids, and it would make common sense to keep up. with
You
traffic.
can make that suggestion, and we'll break it back. Thank you. Yes?
There'll be 5 trains during the rush hours, going in both directions, and then I want to say there's 10 during the off-peak times.
Gentleman there on the left.
I would have to look that up, but it's around the 6 to 8. It's the same as what our current rush hour trains are. I can verify that for you afterwards if you want to ask that.
Gentleman here.
That'll be the NICD Transit Police, which currently also does all of our existing parking lots.
Like any other street racing.
Well, you got a bridge right there, tracks are gonna be right on the other side, so where the crossing gates can be.
Both sides.
So it's gonna be on this side, the south, or the.
Yeah, the warning devices will be laid out such that it indicates in advance. Yes. I don't have the exact location of them yet. They're designing them. For those that don't know, this is a design-build contract, so the plans are not complete. The contractor is working to develop the best solution, and at this point, at 169th, we're actually working with the city of Hammond on some of that geometry in the 165th Street crossing to make that as safe as possible with the crossing gates. Yeah, and the continuity with the sidewalks, because the pedestrian bike path is protected because it goes over. But there's sidewalk on the south side of the street, there isn't a sidewalk on the north side of the street, so it's kind of a different way to look at it. But yes, the full crossing gates that are typical will be installed. Yes?
Did you mention something about a shuttle bus at the beginning?
It'll be a shuttle train, so it'll go from Munster Dyer to the Hammond Gateway station.
Okay.
And then at Hammond Gateway, you will get onto the existing South Shore line.
Oh, so you have to get off and then get back?
Yeah, during those off-peak trains.
Oh, will another train be there, or it's gonna be like, another train
Yeah.
will be there? Okay.
Yeah, our schedule will line up in such a way.
Okay. And then the other thing, I'm not sure, I know about a year or so ago, the mayor was talking about having a, train station by the courthouse. Is that still on, or does anybody know?
That is not in the current plans to have that downtown Hammond station. That is way in the future if it ever does happen. It's not happening to this Westlake Corridor project.
Yes, sir.
I just would like some clarification. You said there will be 5 trains during the rush hour,
Yes.
and 10 trains the rest of the day?
Yeah, so you got your morning rush hour of like 6 to 8, and then you have like your 4 to 6 p.m. rush hour trains, but in that 8 to 4 during midday, you'll have about 10 trains to go back and forth, and then also after 6 p.m. to like 11 p.m., you'll have a few trains there. And those trains would be the shuttles, like the shuttle trains. So if you were coming back from Chicago at 7 p.m., you would take the South Shore line to Hammond Gateway, get off there and hop onto the Westlake one, and you'd go down then to finish your stop. So you would have that transfer at the Gateway station.
And what about horns? And where do they blow the horn in relation to the intersection?
It's all silent,
For example,
right?
in relation to the 173rd?
Yeah. They're both, Hammond and Munster are going through the process so that there will be no horns.
Safety devices will be
Yeah.
installed such that it permits an adjudication or a decision to be made by Indiana Department of Transportation that it can be a no-whistle zone. That's in the process right now, where it's something that a lot of communities have petitioned for and been successful. Yes, yeah, yes. Yes, ma'am, is that ma'am? I can't see, yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand. If you're gonna have 600 parking lots, how are all those people gonna get out to 173rd without being, you said it would be in the parking lot, but I don't understand.
So there'll be a stop sign, so they can only enter traffic one at a time. So the queue will be in the parking lot, kind of like trying to get out of a mall at Christmas time,
Or a church, once it gets
or
out.
a church at Sunday at 10:30. Pardon? It depends on the, as Holly was saying, it depends on when your passengers leave and come, right? The parking lot is not a one-size-fits-all. Not everybody that got on the train at 8 o'clock is going to get off the train at 4 o'clock. So you have a sliding scale with any transit development that the passengers, based on, and they, some of them may park and not come back for a couple days. If they're, you know, say if they're taking the Westlake to the Hammond station and then getting on Metro and going to O'Hare or Midway Airport, they may park there and leave their car and take transit to one of the local airports or into the city for the weekend. So we really don't know the exact in and out, but the road surface itself can handle the, we would call the egress of the vehicles, you know, from the way we've staged the parking lot driveways. Oops, gentleman here in the back first, yes.
Just for scale, then, how many spaces are at the Hammond lot now?
That's
Main Hammond lot?
The main
it's
Hammond lot, that's,
pretty close to what's going to be at the Gateway station.
yeah, that, I would say that's probably gonna be close, because there's the overflow parking lot and the main parking lot. So at the future Hammond station, that will stay, yeah, at 631.
And, and
And, yeah, well, these are the new parking spaces,
the,
and some of the existing will remain at the Hammond station.
yeah, so the existing is right around that 700.
Seven, I think that,
I
yeah.
would-
With the
yeah.
overflow parking lot that I think is on the east side of the lot, right? You have the gate,
Plus,
On the east side.
right,
yeah,
So the total between both of them is approximately 700, is that what
yeah,
I believe so.
now?
right.
Yeah.
And then an additional 631 will be built in the new station, which is on the west side of Sheffield. Where, yeah, yes, sir.
I know from my personal experience, if I see some gates going on in the turn, and race down linemen to try to catch the next opening,
Yeah, that's,
train coming.
yeah, that's a very good point. The development of the transit system is for use in a general population area, so we don't try to change the character of roads. If we study them and then say, well, there is access from these main thoroughfares, which should be the common way of getting there, right? You would assume that people would use the arterials and the main streets. Unfortunately, some individuals, or, you know, during peak hours of rush, if there's traffic, they will go through lightly traveled neighborhood streets. Yeah,
That would be Dean Button back there.
yeah, yeah. There is a, you know, and that, again, that's an opportunity to look at for the future, for a challenge, if the neighbor, yeah. I mean, there's sometimes those things do occur where you find, you know, the transit development generates the proverbial word of mouth, easier way to do things. You know, people park on side streets and run across backyards to get to the parking lot, and then run across the parking lot to get to the station. Sometimes those things happen. Yes, sir.
Kind of piggybacking off of what he said with the speed bump, I've seen in other communities where they had like lighted stop signs, because we have two on Lyman, and I almost got hit by a car one time walking my dog across to the trail. So, because they're just flying
Yeah, that's, I mean, in many, right, yeah. No, many, and those are great. I mean, you had wonderful participation here from the gentleman here, Scott, as well as your precinct people. I mean, those innovations are, to me, you know, this thing still amazes me, right? I mean, but the fact that you can have solar-powered flashing stop signs is, there's so much out there that, and again, that goes to, is it an irritant, and then there's the opposite side of it, is it a nuisance? Because now the person that's on that corner gets that flashing red light in their patio window or their kitchen window. So there's a lot of ways to look at those nuances of what's the best way to, you know, effectively notify and warn people. Is it reflective? Is it flashing light? Is it, you know, the other one that's developed a lot recently in our country that hasn't gone as far as some of you is pavement marking. Has anybody driven in Europe lately? I mean, just as an aside for me, some of the pavement marking they use there is crazy. They have like these back and forth zigs that make you slow down, and it comes out of nowhere on the side of the road. And that's to intentionally make you slow down. So there's a lot of ways in low, you know, low-speed neighborhoods to effectively manage those. Speed humps are a great idea, too. I mean, that's a big thing. I think I had a young lady here in the corner.
If people get out of that parking lot, find themselves in a traffic situation, what's going to keep them from parking in the neighborhood? Using in front of the house?
Yeah, that would be local enforcement, and that is an obvious challenge, that in some areas that you know, people could decide that it's easier. One thing that we hope they do is that in all of the stations, the only access is by going across the railroad, and NICTY's police department will be very, very active in ensuring that they enforce the no walking across the tracks. So they're going to have to go to 173rd Street to get into the station anyway. There's no, if they walk across the track, by default, they are breaking the law. Yes, sir.
She's got a question.
Oops, yes. Thank you, I wasn't even looking that far.
I'm here all night, no worries. I have two things. One, I believe speed bumps are not an option, if I'm not correct, because we just inquired in our neighborhood, and I believe we were told that the state of Indiana doesn't allow them, just as an FYI. Secondly, one of the first meetings I went to a long time ago, and they talked about this station, and some of the options were pocket parks and islands with green and trees inside the parking lots. Are you going to do something like that? Is there going to be some green in that parking lot?
Yes.
And
Yeah, there's shrubbery all around the
tree in
station.
middle doesn't count.
Yeah, no, I believe that I believe that there is multiple trees in each of the median areas, as well as there's greenery around the station, and obviously the perimeter of the parking lot will be, you know, landscaped,
With some type of,
maybe landscaped. There, you know, we've got a nice buffer to the east side of the parking lot with the trees that remain. A lot of those will grow back in very quickly. But the idea is that's kind of a double-edged sword, and I won't speak on behalf of Scott. I will just say what I've heard from other agencies. The police department that that will be by NICTY, it's much easier for them to have line of sight to quickly see what's going on, because everybody knows when a police car pulls into a parking lot, whatever nefarious activity was going on is going to stop. So if you've got a police department that can drive by and see what's going on in the parking lot, I think there was a question about, you know, would there be somebody policing the parking lot? Those lines of sights can be blocked by a lot of foliage.
well, and I realize that, but in many towns, and I don't really know our building code here as well as I should, but traditionally now when you build a new building with a parking lot of substantial size, and we'll take Menards as an example, which I'm sure does not have 600 parking spaces in it, you are required to put X number of green islands in it for health and safety reasons.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, and that's something that we've worked with the city of Hammond on. Those parameters have been met.
Yeah, and also with all the trees we did take down, we did have an agreement with both the town and city saying for all of the hardwood trees that we cut down, this is the number we're gonna be replacing. So we will be planting trees for that too.
Any of the parking lots are along the right-of-way where it's not
Yeah.
going to interfere with future, you know, trimming and growing of the trees over the Canton area or near the train line. We had a gentleman here.
Just a quick clarification, so what would
There'll be one set of tracks. Yep.
And then a siding south of 173rd.
Yeah, there will be some siding, but there's only one main track. No freight, this is a commuter line.
Only. Unlike the South Shore line, which can handle
Correct.
both Class 1 and, yeah.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
What's gonna be the last train at night? Is it gonna be like a current service, so like people who live around here that want to go to cultural things in Chicago? How are we gonna get back here, after midnight? Because the current train is stranded.
Yeah. I don't got a definite answer. I didn't look that closely at the schedule. You can send us an email and we can get you a definite answer, but.
Right now, the train, has limited service at 10 o'clock, you have to wait till the red eye.
Yeah,
A line to come back, ridiculous hour. And for people that don't work in Chicago, this train basically is
yeah,
to take us to cultural things. So the people in this neighborhood, really need a good service as far as that goes, to be able to go there for dinner and things. And, the best part of the city is that aspect.
yeah,
And I'm just, I'm really curious, because you mentioned 11 o'clock multiple times.
yeah, arbitrary number that I threw out. No worries. Yeah. But if you
We'll take
do,
the last couple of questions, and then we'll have to call it a night.
Okay. Oh, let me go to the back there for the young lady again.
Do you happen to know what they're going to do when you go north on Lyman and get the 165th and make a right underneath the bike path bridge and then Blaine? It's like a snake. Do you know what they're going to do or proposing to do?
Yeah, that'll remain the same as an offset intersection, but the train will have a full crossing gate assembly. And I know we're talking about having yeah, both sides. It'll be a 4-quadrant gate. Yeah, and then it'll also have a little bit of a bump out so that when you go eastbound, I think we're going to look to protect that parking lane there. Is that correct, Mr. Button?
Eastbound,
Southbound, east-south lane? Yeah.
south side of the eastbound right-hand lane will not be permitted to park.
Right.
And so it'll be sort of a widened area for the pedestrian. And to clarify, if I remember correctly, to answer the lady's question, eastbound left turn would not be permitted at Blaine because of the proximity of crossing.
Eastbound, left turn lanes. Left turn lanes. Okay, so southbound on Blaine.
Because there's so much equipment and approach distance that movement is very difficult to handle as part of it.
Okay, so it'll be westbound traffic only, right turns.
Westbound right turn on Blaine Street.
Okay. Thank you. So there'll be pavement marking added for that. I apologize, I did not look closely at that intersection either.
We had a site meeting to evaluate each of the crossings with NDOT, with the consultant, with Nikki, and that was an issue.
Great.
Both in terms of the lengths of the arms, the crossing.
To cross the street, yep.
For that widened pedestrian zone on the south side of the village. And the other issue was the eastbound left turn on the Blaine Street.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. Oh, one more here?
Yeah, a couple more questions. One is, I'm assuming that this station here will be north of 173rd. We have parking spots for bicycles as well?
Yes.
You talk about 600 automobile bicycles will be relatively close to the station here?
I believe they are, right in front of the station.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then secondly, if bike path is going to be changed on the sides of the track, right at 173rd, with all the traffic going through there, in or out at the same time, as the cyclist is using from the train, that can become a very unsafe surface. How we want to get across?
Yeah, that's currently at the crossing there. I don't believe that I would have to go back and look detailed at that. I don't believe that sidewalk crossing gates, I don't know, Mr. Button, was there flashing lights to incorporate for bicyclists to stop traffic without the railroad gates being down?
I'm not sure I'm clear what the gentleman's question is, but as you travel southbound on the bike trail, you are west of the railroad. You will cross at Lyman, and then be on the south
Okay, I think we had one more here.
I don't know what the message is. I'm just concerned that people are not listening to those who live there. I'm listening to them in that whole area along the train. And I mean, I go across the house and nobody knows when they're going to close the road. There's no communication at all. And we told, it was a year ago when they were talking about having 700 parking spaces and he says forward is not needed. I went into Chicago last week. I got to the station at 1 o'clock. I pulled in, I was just crying a lot. I mean, there's nobody in the downtown lot. It's just such a waste. And I just wish that you all could talk to the people in charge and let them know this is COVID. People are not going to this. I mean, they are, but I mean, it's not 690 parking spaces. And it's just wasting money. I just wish that somebody would listen to us who live here.
Appreciate that, yes, that's, thank you, Ruth.
Oh, well, thank you, guys.
Okay.
Hold on one second here. Thank you, everybody, for coming. We appreciate Holly and John telling us. And on your literature, is there a way that they can contact you if they have questions?
Yeah.
Yep, email, the website, Facebook Messenger.
Okay, so make sure that you stop by their little place over there. They do have a way to contact them and stay in touch. Thank you all. Be safe.
Thank you. Thank you all.